Jamgön Kongtrül Lodrö Thaye Mare Misra Dungra Nyugu Chinye Jönte Radrenam Dene Dajen Saju Dorsun Yenden Luzo Jase Tugu Chundra Judan Chunye Jende Dalu Misen Jambe Yung Lai Du Zedene Cheche Chinra Vesreje Dalu Demo Menparab Srane Gadon Danger Jongloi Dogwaye Lodrö Thaye no Zaldu Soloi Kange Tuje Sreji Tawa Damje Nam Hongba Denjen Renjon Denda Kong Kodam De Loi Da Sha Jamgön Shana Dorje Jenreze Saye Nyimbo Deva Nam Prasar Namge Nyimbo Shambai Kunduzon Yewe Seshin Jelo Shaje Wu Sheje Kala Jenravi Jenguraje Zebe Don Durje Len Lapo Yarwe Tenbai Kunne Sanjebe Kaju Rinpo Chel Shaje Wu Jamgön Seja Daniele Tamke Samme Shage Yongzon Chen Chanchum Nyimbe Lamgen Karma Pa Meje Debe Jewe Zoge Du Lasso Tene Tatanda Yönden Geje Ta sanje som brbara shede de de sinkinge ten kam samplinge chosog member thang tene dagokaju linge chosog member nge ngoshi nimba chero nimba che namba thang ten thedar maina yang zamne ke sasho kawayina shugdekin tene Chödrak Chigdan Lama Chige Damsik Delve Cheron Pomot Rashidele Shugi Tongo.
Khenpo Rinpoche starts with welcoming all the viewers, the members of Karma Sampling as well as Dakpo Kajeling, Buddhist centers where Khenpo Rinpoche has taught for many years, and the members there he of course then know quite well. He wishes all of you, his friends in the Dharma, welcome to this year's summer course, as well as all others, wherever you may live and work. We are all practitioners who rely upon the head of our lineage and the teachings of our lineage, and this is what brings us together here today. And Khenpo Rinpoche, as was said earlier, wants to extend his welcome to all of you.
Tene 다른 게 코스데 tene ta 타고 가줄리 라로 타고 직 summer course 초비어데 that he Chödrak Tanda Tanda Nasan Dilitane, Ursu Tapor Jarmatum Nayang, Missing June Ma Gamishuayi.
So the summer course is organized by Khenpo Rinpoche, a Buddhist center in France, the main seat of the Karma Kagyu school in Europe. And it is this center, Khenpo Rinpoche, who for the many past years has seen to the organization of the summer course, which usually takes place at Khenpo Rinpoche in France. However, because of the present pandemic, last year's course and this year's course will happen, or happened, and will this year happen digitally.
Course the paging so good than Nedam can chingy or Diana and Dinala Casacala machine and the gadget and Ruby of a Sonza Tabuka you links again the Kandachi Yimba Tell us summer course the Chongdong Kandas Chong Yuva Tene Talu course the Kari Yimba Tenzo Toma Dring a mang or Shugi.
Now, for those of you who in the past have attended the various summer courses more or less regularly, you're familiar with the setup and so on. However, since the course this year can be viewed on the net, there may be others who are not familiar with the format of the summer course and its origin and so on. Therefore, Khenpo Rinpoche will start out for your benefit to explain a bit about Khenpo Rinpoche, that Buddhist center, as well as the format of the summer course and how it came to be, and a bit about this year's topic, an introduction to this year's topic.
Tati in the Europe, America, Western show the la Taka you show ne Toma Chöjum Tumbarum Chepayore, Tijene, Lama Galurum Chepayore, that then to Yelena Tene, Young Gam Baron Chödrak Dorje, then don't you to Shilo, Europe da Arishola Pepper.
Now, in terms of the European continent and the North American continent, in the context of Tibetan Buddhism, and here in particular the Karma Kagyu school, how centers of the Karma Kagyu tradition came to be established on these continents. The following applies. Now, to begin with, the late Trungpa Rinpoche, one would say, was perhaps the first Tibetan Buddhist master to establish Tibetan Buddhist centers on these continents, as well as the late Khenpo Rinpoche. Now, because of their efforts, both these Tibetan Buddhist masters having established numerous Tibetan Buddhist centers on the European continent and the North American continent. In consequence of their efforts, the late Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa, Jamgön Kongtrül Lodrö, traveled to these centers for the first time at the invitation of these masters in 1974.
Ne kasa khala phedne den thama de thabuka ju le sekende ta France sanne dodong shola den Benson shukentege sacha phuche ta yisne go senjel lamne de ta karma pe Europe shoke densati yin song.
Now, in terms of Dakpo Kagyiling, that center, the background is the following. During this travel, in 1974, His Holiness, the Karmapa, the head of the Karma Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, traveled to the Dordogne region. He had been invited there by the late Mr. Benson, who lived there and who had a large land holding there. And Mr. Benson offered a piece of that land holding to the 16th Karmapa, who consecrated the piece of land he had been offered for the purpose of building a Buddhist center there. And he also at the time declared that this would be his main center on the European continent. Trinang c'est du
Dol Trinang doa.
Kongri Rangi Chan.
Da Kongre da Mare Kap de Dushan so. Tene Kolot Dambe, Chinkor to Sinjel Kolot Dambe, Dumcho so. Then so Kangat Nandoa. Tin into Ne Cheperchin.
Now, at this place, this piece of land that had been offered, at the time, His Holiness had Kangi Gela Dulsun Tapre?
Dot Lele Chambutin Gela, Jinkorchi Tina, Saul Bedwa.
Re Dulsungi, Trinang.
That Dunsun San Remudav Jura.
Okay.
Tindet Nang to your.
Yeah. At the time, His Holiness had the mandala of Chakrasamvara drawn on a large slab of stone, which was buried in the ground, and the Chakrasamvara Drubchu, as it's called in Tibetan, meaning the practice of the Chakrasamvara Tantra was performed there for a period of some days for the purpose of consecrating the land that he had been offered. This is a tradition of the Buddhist Tantras, and it is performed in connection with various contexts, among others, for the purpose of consecrating a piece of land for a specific Buddhist purpose.
Choso Tunandra, Laganji Jamnandra, Benzer Sunandra, Nambasanje Lutela, Songhab Judas Samutsonanda, Tombo, Satakpa Songre, Sacha de la, Tindeji Jamna, Temba the Netupsa Red and Mare, Takjetan.
Now, in terms of this type of ritual, as it were, what the Buddhist master would do prior to the ritual would be to examine the details of the land at hand in order to see whether there are indications of it being a good piece of land in terms of the master being able to either with success establish a Buddhist center or build a temple or build a library that would house the Buddhist scriptures for the benefit of many in terms of studies, research and the like. This is a specific practice of the Buddhist Tantras, namely that the master looks for indications in connection with the land he has obtained, and when finding that the circumstances, the design of the land and so on, the natural design that would be, of the area and so on, involve indications of success, then the kind of ritual just described in brief would be held in order to consecrate the land for a specific purpose, whether a Buddhist center, a temple, a library, a monastery, whatever. And the indications are to be indications of establishing one or the other possibilities listed, Buddhist center and so on, whether that would contribute to the Buddha's doctrine remaining, being established and remaining for a long time, thus benefiting many or not. And if the indications are those, then the master would go on to consecrate the land as was just described and dedicate it for a specific purpose.
Samik Nsheke Netela
Same Ngonshigi Netela Ngonshiki
Ngonshiki Tene Tabu Kajulin Tela Tanda Yusatela Chichoso dal Gandetuna Yabuji Yongi Yabate Samik Nsheke Zigyor.
So the late Karmapa, Jamgön Kongtrül Lodrö would, by way of his otherworldly foreknowledge, by way of him having that kind of capacity, he would have divined, as it were, that the land where today you find Dakpo Kagyiling is a piece of land where, with success, either a Buddhist center, temple, library, and so on, could be established, and that this would be beneficial, both in terms of benefiting many and in terms of contributing toward the spreading of the Buddha's doctrine.
Tene, ta di nipate karres na kamba nipate sa hongwas gidre. Sa hongwas de sa de dakbo metang. Tene yakab yongge temlu tang tembase ne sa de la de yeb choye megingwe. Mema yinge ngone sanne tlan eve ta jing mema yin changmal dolma phu ta de la ngende de jegi je choba nongwa tero se shugoya yangkama deyang nang.
Now in terms of the proceedings associated with consecrating the land, before the ritual that was mentioned is held, the master would approach the previous landowner, in this case the late Mr. Benson, who offered this piece of land to him, as well as people in various departments that have to do with applying for building permit and the like, so that he can ensure that all people involved, as it were, including the authorities, are on board in terms of the plan he has for this piece of land. Secondly, he would contact the so-called non-human beings who would dwell in this specific area and perform certain rituals which involve requesting their permission as well for the project the master has in mind. The ritual here involves requesting their permission as well as giving sacrificial offerings to the non-human beings associated with the piece of land in question. Once all those details have been seen to, then the consecration of the landholding would take place. So in terms of the Karma Kagyu school, you find what one may refer to as the four early traditions, and then the the 8 later traditions, sometimes referred to as the 4 greater and the 8 minor traditions. Now, the main Tantra practiced in all of those traditions, that would be to say in the entire in the entire Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, is the Buddhist Tantra known as the Chakra Samvara Tantra. And it was on the basis of this specific tantra that the ritual that makes for consecrating the land holding was made. Now the late Karmapa visited this piece of land on other occasions as well.
Then Yawakama Bekutsak, Jamgön Rinpoche, Tatala Pache, Melojip to Shedukrin, Yugnam.
And during the first visit in 74, the late Karmapa appointed Jamgön Rinpoche, the present head of Dakpo Kagyeling, to that position, and he has acted as the head and the director of Dakpo Kagyeling for over 40 years by now. And then there is the late Shamar Rinpoche, the regent of the late Karmapa, who visited anywhere between 15 and 20 times, Dakpo Kagyeling that is, and there he gave numerous empowerments, teachings, and so on. Nenong de Gumpara.
Gumpara, Power Rinpoche. Kong Yang Kasap Doji, Plomatsovi Terela, Yang Rip Doji Yang, Shalok Terre, Kong Sanetla, Lochu Hasa Yugnane, Senji Labiot. Dakpo area around Rwa.
Then there is another great Tibetan Buddhist master, the late Pawo Rinpoche of the Nenang Monastery, who lived in this region, the Dordogne region, for about 10 years, and he was a disciple of both the 15th Karmapa, Kakyap Dorje, and the 16th Karmapa, Rangyung Rikpe Dorje. And due to him living there for that extended period of time, there are also the effects of his spiritual influence in terms of development and so on, of Tibetan Buddhism in the area.
Ten Tagana Shinke, Jamgön Kongtrül Lodrö Thaye, Sombatam, Yebanika, Shabi Yang Chai.
Paul Rinpoche.
Me, Jamgön Kongtrül.
Ah, yeah.
Sombatam, Yebanika. De la Yang Yang the Payot. Sombate, Lodrö Thaye Singed, Gadi dem Metondon Kitre, Yebate, Tanda Perishin say.
Furthermore, there is the late Jamgön Kongtrül, the third Jamgön Kongtrül, and the present reincarnation, the fourth Jamgön Kongtrül. Both of them have visited Dakpo Kagyeling and taught there.
Jamya Chinza Umbu Song Turku, Bear Chinze, Guntin Samba Koya Yang Yang Bishaju Job.
Also, one of one of the 5 reincarnations of the late Jamgön Khyentse, the reincarnation associated with the speech perspective of Jamgön Kongtrül, namely Bero Khense III, has visited, taught and given empowerments on many occasions in Dakpo Kagyeling. Or at Dakpo Kagyeling. Also, the late Khenpo Rinpoche, an accomplished meditation master, visited Dakpo Kagyeling on numerous occasions. Then there is the late Jamgön Rinpoche, a Tibetan Buddhist meditation master who lived and worked for approximately 23 years in Dakpo Kagyeling and Kongtrül Ling, the monastery associated with Dakpo Kagyeling. He also passed away at the monastery of Kongtrül Ling.
His Holiness Jamgön Kongtrül
Also the head of the Drukpa Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, His Holiness
Jamgön
His Holiness Jamgön Kongtrül has visited on numerous occasions. He has given empowerments and teachings at Dakpo Kagyeling. Then there is the Talung Kajugi one of the most prominent lamas of the Talung Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, Khenpo Rinpoche, of the Rinpoche monastery, has also visited Dakpo Kagyeling, has also taught and given empowerments there.
Baram Kajuge Tempe Solje Chembo.
Tempe Solje?
Tempe, Denzing Jibu Chembo. Then Shachin, Soxing Yamlin, hard to pay Yunkin, Trugu Jerumbachang, Sanetala, Ting Nisum Sharp Job.
Also, the late Tulku Ujjan Rinpoche came there 2 or 3 times. He was of the Baram Kagyu school and one of the most prominent masters of that tradition, known as accomplished in both Mahamudra and Mahaati. So Dakpo Kagyeling is a place that is blessed or has been blessed by the presence of all those Buddhist masters.
Guru Jatsap Dunjam Rinpoche, Jigdar Yeshidoje Sanetala Perre, Jure, Tamakusin Doje Yang Tongsa Sanetala.
Also, a great Nyingma master known as the regent, one of the regents of Guru Rinpoche, Dujum Rinpoche, Jigdral Yeshidorje, lived in this area for many, many years, and he also passed away there.
Dingo Chinzer Muche, Techo Tempe Jansi, Rasal.
Dingo Chinzer, Tene?
Techo Tempe Jansi.
Techo Tempe Jansi.
Tempe Jansi, Tashi Panjur.
Tsani.
Yeah. Kong Sanet la link to Mape.
Then there is the late Dingo Khenpo Rinpoche, and in terms of the 5 reincarnations of the late Jamgön Kongtrül, he is regarded as the reincarnation associated with the enlightened mindset of Jamgön Kongtrül. Now, it appears that Dingo Khenpo Rinpoche had 2 names, Tekcho Tempe Jansen and Tashi Paljo. And he spent extended periods on numerous occasions in the area, and during these occasions he was invited to Dakpo Kagyeling, where he had given many empowerments and teachings.
Then Tagana Shinke, Jamgön Chinze Umbu, Chinleg Turku, Zongsar Chinze, Tuptin Chögi Gyatso Yang,
Tuptin Chögi Gyatso.
Oh, Sanet la Yang Pedevs.
Then there is the present Zongsar Chense, regarded as or associated with, however one wants to phrase it, the enlightened actions. He's associated with the enlightened or enlightening actions perspective of the late Jamgön Kongtrül. His name is Tupten Chö Gyatso, and he has also visited Dakpo Kagyeling on many occasions.
Tene Tagana Shinki Nime Shone, Turjing Donghaling Bayang, the Latsa Mumba Pepkashu Mambotang Dever Diyer.
Then there is the late Trulshik Donga Lingpa of the Nyingma school, who has also visited there. As well as many other masters of the Nyingma school. Yeah. You have the area associated with Dakpo Kagyeling, and many of these masters, while in the area, would visit Dakpo Kagyeling at the invitation of Dakpo Kagyeling, of course. There is the previous Sakya Tritsin, the head of the Sakya school, who also visited Dakpo Kagyeling.
Tene Tagana Shinge, Sakya Tenzin Jechin, Tanda, Chobje Rinpoche Yang, the Lab Pep.
As well as the late Chödrak Rinpoche, a well-known master of the Sakya school, who visited also on a number of occasions.
Tagana Shinge, His Eminence Tarse Kinchin,
and His Eminence Tarse Khenpo.
Yeah, Tarse Khenpo. Ngawang Sönam Chöden.
Ngawang Sönam Chöden.
Yeah.
He also gave empowerment and teachings at Dakpo Kagyeling.
He in the
So there are many great Tibetan Buddhist masters who have visited Dakpo Kagyeling and blessed the area with their presence there, and by way of the empowerment that they have given and the teachings they have given.
Penna chirtang gi thon shuna ne cheparchin singedala kandeche te nambeg luxury yore Hindu gi luxury yore Christianity gi luxury yandu Muslim gi luxury yandu ne cheparchin singed ne singed.
Now in most religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, and so on, there is the idea of specific places as special, as places imbued with the spiritual power of masters who have either visited or lived and worked there.
Te chapartuyang tanda Jamgön Doji chang kuntin chudun ba tenla Thaye doji cho yang pechene tenla chongse ne chaparchin ji chawtre.
And Dakpo Kadaling is today the main Buddhist center on the European continent in terms of the Karmakagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism, and its present head, the 17th Karmapa, Trönlö Thaye Dorje, who had been there on numerous occasions, also giving empowerments, teachings, and so on.
Ti into tange pena ne cheparchen sangeti kodon le kandechling gogres ne Professor Sembaji la nge kandu shu tendei kong sona ne cheparchen sangetela junsin sum yore songto.
Now Khenpo Rinpoche on one occasion asked Professor Sembaji, a great scholar and practitioner in the world of Tibetan Buddhism today, also the main tutor of the 17th Karmapa, Trönlö Thaye Dorje, what it is that characterizes a so-called special place. What is it that makes a place special in terms of, for example, a religion or a tradition? And he gave 3 reasons for a place being referred to as special.
Tatilla disungdo tangbote jebu cheparchen tenzo satela pep tene zepadam tine chongxaba jigogre sungdo.
The first of the 3 reasons Professor Sembaji explained would be that one or many accomplished masters have visited the place in question and performed rituals, given empowerments, teachings, and the like. The master in question would have enacted the deeds of, in this case, the path to enlightenment. This circumstance would make a place special.
Nipate jebu tambatso tatini tajin kondu shuetre jebu tambat tamnaji pep sajitele shinjilab nandoga.
The second of the 3 reasons would be that many accomplished masters would have visited the place in question and enacted in this place the deeds of the path to enlightenment there, which would make for the place becoming imbued with, as it were, the spiritual influence of this path to enlightenment, and therefore special. Sumpa. Sorry, what I just listed as the second of the three reasons for a place being special isn't the second of the three reasons. It's to be incorporated in the first of the three reasons for why a place is said to be special. The second reason is that the place in question houses representations of the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, or Buddha, the enlightened state, in terms of Buddhism. Of course, these representations would be other representations in other religions. However, in the context of Buddhism, it's about representations of the body, speech, and mind of the founder, the founder of Buddhism today, Buddha Shakyamuni, or Buddha the enlightened state, however one wants to phrase it. So in terms of representations associated with form, that would mean, for example, a statue or painting of Buddha Shakyamuni, depictions of yidams, various forms meditated upon in the Buddhist tantras, and so on. If we take the example again of Dakpo Kajeling, in its shrine room, which is also the teaching hall, there is on the shrine a large Buddha statue that, or which, according to the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, is filled with various sacred substances. Now, one of those substances is a relic of the Buddha of this era, Buddha Shakyamuni. As well as other sacred substances obtained from what is referred to as the treasury box of sacred substances, which belonged to the Karmapa, the late Karmapa. There is also a sacred substance within the same statue, obtained from one of the teeth of Guru Padmasambhava himself. It's a small round pill-shaped sacred substance, which it is explained arose sort of miraculously arisen from one of the teeth of Guru Padmasambhava. In terms of the speech perspective, you have both the collection in this shrine room of the Kanjur, which records all teachings Buddha Shakyamuni gave, as well as the collection of commentaries to these teachings, authored by Buddhist masters of old, the Tenjur. And then you have the third perspective, that of the mind in terms of an enlightened master. And here on the shrine in the teaching hall, there is rather behind the teaching hall there is a large stupa outside, which houses some of the remains of the late Chödrak Rinpoche. And there is another set of 8 stupas, reliquaries, also housing sacred substances in connection with the larger stupa, which houses some of the remains of the late Chödrak Rinpoche. So these representations are to be part of a so-called special place. These types of representation, the presence of them, makes for the place being special.
Somebody that the Jinshipe song Sanjij song Ganjur Yaga Pogby Kavas of song Danger Tilla Delpat Dreshe Per Konsengi Jungla Tarse the Benzo Kong Hajan Chembushur.
And then in terms of Dakpo Kadiling, you have a very, very large library which houses many numerable scriptures in terms of Buddha Shakyamuni's doctrine, authored by Buddhist masters of old from the Indian subcontinent, from Tibet, and so on. There is a rather large library in terms of Buddhist scriptures available for studies, research, and so on. And that would make for the third of the 3 reasons for a place being special. And Dakpo Kagyeling has all three perspectives on its land.
Pena sanete la chik sanete da thanye such a lebrode rang assembly and juan rotu bache ten yore.
And this will have, whether individuals notice this or not, this will have an impact on those who visit that kind of place.
Pena ngarthinche tanda tu pema onjer machada kejason pema onjer machada songdo pena sanente ngone jeb tamba mungo peson du sinjela benne chever jinje reshaos pena ma wonong du bribla levata ten homa de jorgres ten yang tem menane very good ne so on the no at jorgres so ngomai de so ji orage.
There are in the area Buddhist centers of other traditions. There is one organization where the present head is Tulku Pema Wongya. Now, on one occasion when Khenpo met with him, he said to Khenpo Rinpoche that when he has been traveling and returns, and then you have, when you travel to the Dordogne area, you have two cities where you would take the train to either of them, unless you fly into Bordeaux and then drive up. However, Tulku Pema Wongyal in this conversation had mentioned the two nearby train stations, one in the city of Brive and one in the city of Périgueux, saying when he arrives there, he personally experiences the impact of the spiritual influence with which this area is imbued due to the many great masters who have been there, some of them who have lived there for many, many years. And these explanations have been given in order to make clear what type of Buddhist center Dakpo Kagyeling is, and to explain that it is the main center in terms of the Karma Kagyu school on the European continent.
Teni Yawakam Bage, Takuriki Kutsap, Jamgön Rinpoche the Kanang, Tapoke Yulin, a Mount Ba, Pena, dancing the Masona, not Sunku, Sunche Kanang.
Now, in terms of the late Karmapa, Rangyung Rikpe Dorje, appointing Jamgön Rinpoche as his representative and the head of Dakpo Kagyeling, in Jamgön Rinpoche's one of the many conversations with the late Karmapa regarding this, in one of the conversations between them, he had, the late Karmapa that is, said to Jamgön Rinpoche that there were 5 things or perspectives that he wanted to be established at this place.
Tene, di tanda te rere chindu yang yi rang sha chi shadam yap sai jön chen yige tin jingram shadan nang.
His Holiness put down the 5 points in a written document which he himself wrote and which he then sealed with the seal of the Karmapa, his seal, and then gave to Jamgön Rinpoche.
다티 나나 던신 당보텔라 미창마 추루루 제사 낭배 최소 야부치 쪽쇼송.
The first of the 5 points is about the late Karmapa wanting efforts to be made by way of which a Buddhist center would be established, a Buddhist center where people could come in contact with the Buddha's doctrine.
되네 던신이 이빠들라 다 콘저 낭받던 저다 교소노 롭종체 어즈레 받던 저 때까지 비 삭준 따르도 죽황는 로세 죽황 접쇼송.
The second point concerned the establishing of a retreat center, a traditional 3-year retreat center, for the benefit of practitioners who had developed a bit, who had practiced for quite some time, and who would therefore presumably benefit from partaking in a 3-year retreat.
되네 던신 숨받들라 죽황은 육살베게 제품을 수인나양 랍도송외 대체 용도여나 랍종게 주사 자배 금바당 안에 금바죠.
The third point was about, or is about, well, was, because it has materialized. It has been there for many years now, namely the establishing of a monastic institution primarily for those who had done 1 or more 3-year retreats, the establishing of a nunnery as well as a monastery for males.
던신 시바들라 벤저 공천부지 접두비지 송.
The fourth point concerned the establishing of a large library.
대단히 직도 되네. 다 벤저 공 예배 핑가 말에 될라 로종게 대쪽도지 송.
In terms of, or with rather, a study program for those practitioners who are interested in Buddhist studies, a proper study program for them.
되네 던진 아바텔라 로종 예배 속에 되네 산제기 송랍 롱바소수 깨토를 줄네 롱바소수 미 산지 땀바다 나부집 투바지 마웅바나 조어도 송샤
Jurjagi like
야 줄네 나부집 고그러와.
Yeah. Then the fifth and last point regarded the establishing of a Department of Translation, translation into various languages, proper translations, because without such translations it's quite difficult, if not next to impossible, to convey the messages or teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni's doctrine. Its independence upon proper translations of the Buddhist scriptures, that Buddhism can be transmitted.
다 된소양 레레 신도 이신도 코랑랑 샤그리체네 된징말랑 점바체기 사단도.
And as was said, His Holiness wrote down the details himself in a document which he sealed and gave to Jamgön Rinpoche.
다 굽주 권인로라 Jamgön Rinpoche kiwi le pet ne te kung le jaw kama be kan no atege choso yang tabu ka ju ne amara tang yin la choso jasi tu yus then gamba yang jab yus drokan yang jab sha yus benza yang tu yus ta gomba kung ma to ate lobjong ge de tu ye tre te thanda thema sung ta tabgram ji cherani ke samaj tang go do skanans.
Now in 92 Jamgön Rinpoche came for a visit to the Karmapa International Buddhist Institute in New Delhi, the capital of India, where at the time both Khenpo Rinpoche and the late Chödrak Rinpoche lived and worked. Setting up the various teachings and teaching themselves at the institute. Now, Jamgön Rinpoche on this visit said to both of them that in terms of this 5-point document, I've been able to direct Dakpo Kagyiling so that there now is Dakpo Kagyiling and its or as a Buddhist center with various branches, approximately 100 branches throughout France. I've been able to see to that monastic institution and retreat centers have been built and are functioning. I have also been able to see to efforts as to the library aspect. So these 4 points are at this point developing and functioning. However, the 5th point, that of a Department of Translation and Associated Education, I have not yet been able to make a reality.
Oh, that is song name must say. 이 차트 강가때 로종 가르가르 제고기와 이진의 사진나는 낭샤 원고람들 숨도 예.
And Jamgön Rinpoche had brought the document written by the late Karmapa, where the late Karmapa set forth the kind of study program he wanted in terms of Dakpo Kagyiling, and there were 3 types of curriculum. One for more advanced students, one for those of a middling capacity, and one for newcomers, as it were.
That nang the young doji changge shagdi di chingje tel samna tang de ngaran te di ngone sem gnang chorwala tan di shawan de duk gu mari tembe pe khaso sem ge chorwa nang la ji ma dewa yang chung kesi duk tu ba ina yang kam be gongshi ge le ju ju ye ba ten 하정 깔바상 버릴 텐데 가설지 손다 좋아당 가설니까 뒤값라 가지고요 까먹가지고 용차 첨본데 당해진배 값라와.
So Jamgön Rinpoche at the time sought the help of Chödrak Rinpoche and Khenpo Rinpoche in order to make the 5th point a reality. And Khenpo Rinpoche said he had a mixed reaction. One of sadness and one of joy. One of sadness simply because he thought this will be very difficult to make a reality, and one of joy because of realizing that he could actually contribute towards making this project set forth by the late Karmapa a reality.
Then lamsang dagarang shabshuyin shutumasung tagi chegi sekhubi.
Now at the time he hadn't made up his mind entirely, so he informed Jamgön Rinpoche that he would give some thought to the matter and let him know.
Te yema togaram cheda gamem busung togaram chege ta khari yinam nanganzo lekatel chi injujas.
Now later on Khenpo Rinpoche and Tobga Rinpoche talked about this, and Tobga Rinpoche said, well, whatever, we should just go ahead and do our best and try to make this a reality.
Tene ta de chedu ta mune mesikin dangye jinduna dagarang res jente takjo chene ta goju kosamne dalo partu 제단 로 니슈 자제레 때 로직 추투 마송 다 로니슈 잡든 바데 다운데레.
So then Khenpo Rinpoche committed to this project, and in 93 the first summer course was held, and that's 28 years ago now. However, in terms of a teaching program, there was 1 year of no summer course because of the passing of the late Shamar Rinpoche. So all in all, there have been 27 years with a summer course each of these years.
Summer course le nyotaya shong ma song lo truk so le tu fin serve rawayan ye kandar ngarang gerla ta ying rawa khang me yaw kam pe ka drup song thup song message chig nang la shawa thindin chig cheba din sam gasur shitay.
And Khenpo Rinpoche today is very pleased because of having been able to contribute towards making the 5th point in the document a reality. He has worked for that these past 27 years. Throughout the summer courses, there haven't been any specific difficulties such as falling ill and the like, and not being able to do the entire course that year, or any other kind of problem. So Khenpo Rinpoche says today he's very pleased with having been able to contribute in this way towards making His Holiness plan a reality.
Penna sanje karma pag tinde chashi ji duptu ateyang ngone thane rajin suina yang sonam ji so chempo ji sana ma to duptu gu marwa.
There is great merit in being able just to accomplish a fraction of any plan of a karmapa, and in terms of Tibetan Buddhism, and particularly the Kagyu school, then one would say, even beyond the Kagyu school, the karmapas are known as Buddha karmapa.
Penna doji che penna le sondwa nime du la
doji che patesugwa the
nime du la doji che penna ne chi ye ji he tum na yang du sam ji sanje tham je tu nye be gyur cha gu sondwa.
Now there is a 4-line verse in the Diamond Sutra, which says the following: to explain to others even just 4 lines of this sutra is
Yes. Then
is equivalent to a great offering made to all the Buddhas of past, present, and future.
Champa
Sengedra.
Da. Shu ben doi nang tu. Tong sum jin jik den jik kam de.
Tong sum jik den jik kam. Tong sum jik den jik kam.
De Rinpoche na dön gong ne yak king ja su ne. Ni ma re chen do. Sanje nam da phulwa le. Tungi ke kam de la. Sanje ji song. Tsig yala chen yin chen na te pinyon che song.
Tsig sanje ji song karina.
Karina.
There is deyang dochik ergo.
Really, shamba singe de shupen dos.
There is another sutra requested by a disciple named the Lion's Roar of Loving Kindness. In there, the Buddha says that if an individual in the era of degeneration, the name being a reference to an era where morals, as it were, have degenerated to a great extent, if during a period like that, a person properly explains just 4 lines of a teaching given by Buddha Shakyamuni properly, accurately, then that results in merit far greater than the merit that would come from filling our entire world system, the so-called trilliocosm, with the 7 most precious substances every day for many days, and making an offering of these to all the Buddhas. So there is greater merit in accurately explaining just 4 lines of the Buddha's teaching than making an offering on that scale of the most precious substances. And these can be established by way of logic and reasoning as well. So that's all for today in terms of Khenpo Rinpoche wanting to give an introduction to the background, as it were, of the yearly summer course given at Dakpo Kagyeling.
Tene dalo yinaya summer course de yapongmege ngarange kantutup rawayue che namba konam chongro nang.
Khenpo Rinpoche hopes and prays that all who attend may be able to benefit, and therefore this year's summer course will give that good result. And he asks all of you to pray for the same.
Tene tache namba chwa khan yuwa tenzo tabu kaju linge website sede.
Yes.
Tabu kaju linge website nang la tongro nang.
Now, in terms of questions that you may have, there is a question and answer session once a week. Now, you need to email your question to Dakpo Kagyeling, and you find their email address on their homepage on the net. And you need to have mailed in your question by the evening, the day before the question and answer session.
Tene yin ngala rewa kayang me chen nampe chwa te ne la karwa chi nang yung be rewa shira chegi.
Khenpo Rinpoche says he has no specific advice here in terms of the questions and answers. However, he would like to ask you to please stick to the topic taught as much as possible and be clear and precise in your questions.
Lasu sunam de ya tamje zagbanye tomne nyebe danam pamche te jagan na che balap trubba sigbe solen do war shu.